Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to Football Inc. I hope you are all happy and healthy, doing the things you love. It's your Friday, late afternoon, early evening transfer news, views, and clues update with myself, Sean Butler, and Johnny H. How are you, Johnny?
I'm all good. I'm all good. What's the latest, Sean? It's going to come. I mean, kickoff is Sunday, 1st of June, where all the talk stops being talk and the deals get done officially in this opening 2-week window. So I think it's going to be fast and furious from Sunday onwards for the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
So
Feels like there's already started in a lot of places, just not where we are, but everywhere else, it seems to be a lot of business being done very early. And we got some not breaking news. Maybe it is breaking news. We'll start off straight away with the news out of Liverpool today, Johnny. Liverpool have officially submitted, according to Sky Sports, their opening bid for Florian Wirtz at £105 million. They're not messing about, are they? 105 million for an opening gambit. It's not bad.
No, listen, look, they earn nice, significant sum from the Champions League, although they never made the final. They were top of the table, went in, so I think they have the money. Didn't spend any money last season, as we said in an earlier show. So, they don't mess around. When they spend the money, they spend it on the right players. Look at last time. They bought Virgil van Dijk. They bought Alisson, game changers. And Florian Wirtz is that. Quite why he didn't go to Man City or Man City pulled out, I'm not quite sure. But they obviously saw better value in the deals that they're going to do, which we'll talk about in a minute. But top player, 22 years of age. Will he make the transition to the Premier League? There's never a guarantee, is there, Sean?
Never a guarantee. Plenty of players have come over from Europe for big money moves and have ended up being on the south side of value, mate. If I'm entirely honest, I'd make the argument that, in terms of players that have come across from the continent at the top end of the transfer value, most of them, I'd make the argument, most of them have been disappointing in terms of value for money. You can make the argument that Darwin Núñez, as one of their own at Liverpool, didn't really live up to the expectations. Certainly, several at Manchester United have been incredibly disappointing. Look at Anthony. You go to Chelsea for a couple of names as well. I think maybe the only £100 million player, give or take, that's really lived up to expectation in recent transfer windows has been maybe Declan Rice, but he was obviously already a London boy.
Homegrown.
And homegrown, and you're starting maybe to look at players like Caicedo and seeing some of the value there, but still a push to justify the valuation. It'd be very interesting to see.
Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, Lavia. I suppose Enzo Fernandez has been probably the most successful foreign buy at big money. Some maybe argue that, but I think he's very much a leader and he doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But on the whole, it's a big gamble. I think the South Americans, when they come in, having played on the feisty stage, that aggression, I think they're more suited to the Premier League, in my opinion. But what it's worth.
And as far as why did Manchester City sort of pull out of that one? Well, look, we can speculate, can't we? We can only speculate, really. Maybe they thought that, just as a branding exercise, they didn't want to be outdone by Liverpool. They didn't want to have that kind of reputational hit that they went in for a player, and Liverpool had the stones for it. Maybe it just came down to money. Now, Manchester City don't usually have too much to worry about in the realms of the financial capacity, but they have already made. They sort of front run and front loaded in January 2 or 3 big name signings, and then looks like they've already made some very, very strong headway this summer in regards. One player that I know that we were looking at Tottenham or very interested in, Rejinders, looks like he's coming into their number 10. Yeah. Rumours are that that's almost close, that the professional...
Top player.
Yeah, I think he'll be an absolute baller, and he's going to be costing around 40 million. And then today... I'm not saying it's out of nowhere, but Rejinders, right, is another one that's the agreement's been met in full. That guy's another absolute baller, top level player that's coming in, and Manchester City going through an absolutely incredible paced rebuild, Johnny.
Well, then listen, I think they've got some great pace there. Imagine that Cherki, Mamouche, they've got some. There's a lot of threat there, with a fit Haaland. Rodri back, they're looking to strike these deals el pronto so they can take them off to the World Club Cup. And with the huge sums of money that's available for that tournament, I think that this tournament is more or less going to almost cover some of the wages, the transfer fees for these two players. So, in essence, they're probably getting two for the price of one and a bit of change in Cherky and Rejinders. I hope they've informed Father Christmas that Rejinders will not be available at come Christmas. I just think they're two very good players, and Cherky is a bit of a handful. It'll be interesting to see, because he's got a bit of a reputation, how he handles them.
Do you know what I find? I know what I think is going to be really interesting is how does he fit into the Pep Guardiola model? The one thing about Ray and Cherky, like, he's unbelievable with the ball at his feet, right? He can do pretty much anything he wants with it in that final third. But I think it's worth pointing out that he doesn't defend. Right? He doesn't really do anything in the way of defensive work. He's basically, in his previous incarnations at Lyon and that, he's basically been given the free rein to stay up the pitch, almost like what Mo Salah is offered at Liverpool, but with him, he can come a little bit more central. Pep Guardiola's team and system, with that ferocious press, it kind of requires everybody to put in their effort, because if you can't really do the 10-man press with 9 men, we saw, the problems, the kind of futility of the sort of, what's the word? The frailty of a 9-man press with Ten Hag at Manchester United. It creates the ability for people to triangle their way through the system.
Well, what are they going to do with? What I was going to say, what are they going to do at Man United when they got Cunha, who he walks more than any other player in the Premier League. I mean, he's unbelievable talent, but he spends most of his time, walking around the pitch. So I don't know how Amorim's going to handle that one. But listen, there's so much talent there. I mean, when you think about Foden, Oscar Bob, who was a really exciting talent, and till he had this injury which ruined most of his season. They've got a lot of crazy attacking talent, which will probably see the likes of Jack Grealish forced out this summer. Rumours that he's going somewhere, but I think they're going to have to fund it, because no one is going to pay top dollar, and no one's going to be paying anywhere near the wages that he's on at City.
Yeah, I think that you might see Jack Grealish leaving for
Italy or something. See Milan, somewhere like that, Inter,
possibly,
where it's slower pace. He can strut all his stuff, have his socks rolled down with his shin pads poking out, all that sort of crap.
Could you see him going back to Aston Villa?
Nah.
You don't think so? Aston Villa tried the Marcus Rashford experiment, but obviously he's gone back. I just wonder whether or not Aston Villa, he might be the perfect place. We're looking at Ben Davies. I know it's a smaller story, but he's going back to Wales. He looks like he's going to Wrexham today. I just wonder if it might be, the summer of homecomings and a little bit of sort of returning to what to get some sort of, I don't know, last sort of sunset out of their careers. Obviously, Jack Grealish has still got a few more years on his side, but just to finish off the Cherky point, though, I really do feel like he's an incredible talent. But either he's going to have to adapt to Manchester City's system and put a bit of effort in, or Manchester City are going to have to find a way to adapt their system to allow for his traditional tendencies. Because I tell you what, I've watched him a lot, and defensive work isn't something that he's used to doing. So in a system that relies on a front press, it's going to be interesting to see how that one develops.
I like to see how Pep's going to control him, because he has a few issues there. Do you know what I mean? But listen, look, they're a very mobile team, Man City. They've got big rebuild job. But, when you look at Vadik Gavidal and the rest of that team, it's very mobile, very quick. Whether they'll change his style again, because, Pep, every 18 months or so, he changes it up a bit. So he might have to change it this season. It's going to be an exciting transfer. It's going to be an exciting season next season, because, what with Arsenal going full out, spending the big money, Liverpool spending the big money, and City, and obviously United. This could be the biggest window we've had in the Premier League this season. I think it really could be that big.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive amount of transfer budget, for sure.
Well, we've got 6 teams in the Champions League, which could be the facilitator for that big spend,
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of one of the teams that are not, you did just mention Manchester United. There's rumours out today that they're not going to be undone by their failure in the pursuit of signing Liam Delap. And as you look down the kind of the striker market, as we spoke about this earlier, Johnny, on Spurs Talk Show, and I think we spoke about it yesterday as well here on Football Inc., it feels a little bit like, I think for the first time in many a season, that there might be slightly more supply in the striker market than there is demand, which is a rarity. A lot of teams are still looking, but there seems to be a lot of players that are potentially on the move. But Manchester United, because they've got their own financial issues, they might have to sell a few players. Rumours out this afternoon that they are looking at Berghardt from Mainz, Jonathan Berghardt, a striker that's reported to have a 20 million release fee. A handy player. I think he's 24 years old. He's had 100 senior appearances for Mainz, who plays in a 3-4-3 shape. So not dissimilar to what Amorim would like to do at Manchester United. And I think he got 18 goals last term. So a player that certainly he's not young. He's sort of not wet behind the ears, so to speak. But he is a player that's emerging quite strongly. And like I say, he plays in a familiar system. Is that a player that you think, or that sort of end of the market, you think Manchester United might have to move into, or do you think that maybe they'll be able to find, some money under the sofa if it comes in the shape of a Saudi bid for Bruno Fernandes for £100 million and 700 grand a week?
Yeah, I mean, look, these deals from Saudi, they just smell so fishy. I mean, £100 million. Let's be real. They've got Jadon Sancho, who's got a deal with Chelsea for 25 million. An obligation to buy, but they can get out of it by paying a £5 million fine, which will mean he'll go back and they'll start again. I wouldn't be surprised if it does fall through that he ends up back at somewhere like Borussia Dortmund for a trade-off for someone like Gittins, who people seem to have stopped talking about Gittins, which I'm a bit surprised about. But they have players. Kobe Mainu could be on his way. Can they get Rashford out? Will they get rid of Casemiro because the legs are going in the middle of the park? Garnacho. I think if I was United, get Cunha over the line, try get these players out, and go for a higher caliber of striker than the guy we talk about there at Rennes.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, really. Like, you think Manchester United haven't got any money to spend, but they do, like you say, they do have a lot of money. Just a lot of money in player assets that seemingly are willing to be moved on. It's just interesting to see, again, as I mentioned this earlier on, is it a case of the early bird catches a worm, or maybe patience might be a virtue for certain positions in this transfer market? We'll have to see. You mentioned about...
they've got both, haven't they, Sean? That's what I'm saying. They've gone for a top player in Matthias Cunha. I don't know anyone who could turn around and say he's not a fantastic talent. So they've got one fantastic talent, and now they'll wait for the next until they get some money in. But they, had they left it, maybe someone would have come in with a more attractive offer for Cunha, and they couldn't take that risk because he is an Amorim type of player, So
100%, mate, 100%. Another story that popped out last night, quite an interesting one, really. Christopher Nkunku, Chelsea lad, £70 million, I think they paid for him. Massive injury concerns throughout his career, really. But obviously, when he arrived at Chelsea, he got sidelined with that nasty, I think it was a ligament injury. Took him a while to get back in. I think this season, he's only played 9 starts and maybe something like 17 appearances in total. But he has scored 3 goals and a couple of assists. Rumours out that he's the rumours are that he wants to go back to Germany, but the team with the most concrete interest is a team that doesn't really do very much business with Chelsea over the years, mate. And that is, of course, our own beloved Tottenham Hotspur. So a bit of a strange one, though.
No, listen, look, when you're second fiddle to Nicholas, I need 30 shots to score a goal, Jackson, I think, you have a problem. Look, I'll be honest with you. I called it 100% wrong. I thought Nkunku was going to be an absolute smash at Chelsea, watching him in Germany. But the injuries obviously set him back massively. It doesn't mean there isn't a talent in there. And, next season...
He's a cracking player.
Yeah.
Cracking player, for sure.
But,
is it a horse for courses? Is he just not a fit for the Premier League? Or is the injuries has taken its toll?
The injuries have taken their toll. But I do think, Spurs are no way going to pay the sort of money that Chelsea want. Therefore, it would have to be a loan. He's probably on a 6-year contract.
Yeah.
the thing is, well, it'd be a lower fee. No, Chelsea set up with lower fees but longer contracts. Okay, so I think what you'll find.
I think he is earning 300 grand a week, though. I think he genuinely is.
I would be very shocked if he's on.
That's what he said in the maybe whatever.
Yeah, no, I'd be surprised because long contracts, less money. But this is the downside of this type of deal. Like the Ukrainian guy who's gone off the radar. Have you noticed he's suddenly?
Well, he's been banned, hasn't he?
Well, he's been.
Was he doing cocaine or something?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, this is the upshot when you pay the money and then you put them on 6-7 year rolling contracts. When it doesn't go right, it can be problematic. So I see this as a loan only to back to Germany or to can't see it to Spurs, but a loan with Chelsea contributing towards his wages. Yeah. That's the downside of it. Would I complain if he came to Spurs? Probably not, because if you can get him in tuned up as to how he was playing in Germany, then you've got a cracking player.
Yeah, 100%. Interesting noise out of the Arsenal sort of ranks today. Obviously, we spoke yesterday that Sesko was their move in the market, mate. Don't know why they've decided to pivot away from Gyökeres. I never know how to say his name. I think that's Gyökeres. Has he? Have Arsenal had to make their decision based on, or choose between the two based on the idea that if it's true that rumours are suggesting that Gyökeres is sort of saying, I'm not in any rush, I'm going to wait and see what my options are, that Arteta maybe is just sitting there thinking, well, I can't miss this one. I have to get one done, because if I dare screw this up and don't bring in one of those two, then, you know, that's another just nail in the coffin, right? And all those fans that still have his back, they won't forgive him for not bringing in a top striker. And so the fact that one of them might be a bit more patient and the other one is there for the sort of ripe for plucking, are they maybe sort of just going after the one that they know that they can get rather than the one that they want?
First of all, it's nothing to do with Arteta. It's to do with the director of football and, the Cronkies to stump up the money, and for the director of football, the new director of football, Beto, to deliver the player. And he has a relationship with Gyökeres, which is quite well established, well known. And he has relationships with RB. So I think either is a possibility. But, you know, what a prospect to be in, or a lovely position to be in, where you're, you know, deciding whether to spend, 85 million on one or 90 million on the other, right? Most clubs would be jumping up and down for that decision. So I'm not going to feel sorry for Arsenal in that respect. But whichever one they get, they would be getting a top striker. Personally, I think Gyökeres is the one, because like I've said to you personally, he gives me Harry Kane vibes. Oh, he's a one season wonder, yet the guy keeps doing it and doing it and doing it. 63 goals in 58 games last season. For me, that's where I'd be putting my money on if I had to gamble.
Yeah, same. I personally think that Gyökeres is a much more well-rounded player, and so the fact that they've gone with Sesko, for me, if you look at Sesko's stats, that's what the story is suggesting. And if that's the case, then for me, that's why I believe that there is something around maybe just the fear of missing out, the FOMO, and the fact that they can't necessarily wait for a guy because this is Arteta's last chance. So if it's true, if they have gone for Sesko, when you look at the two players, you look at their well-roundedness, and most Arsenal fans are not interested in a good player that could be great tomorrow. They're looking for a great player today. And of the two, surely the Swede is the one that ticks that box. So if they do end up with Sesko, then I think there's more to it. I think it's more around a panic, a small panic, not like they're it's
the 90 million a panic, Sean. Well, is really 90 million a panic
money though, Johnny. That's ridiculous money for a player that, look, he's good, but if you go and look at his passing stats, his passing stats are horrendous. He's a lethal finisher, but Arsenal like to bring players into the game and like to create a well-rounded unit. And how many times are they going to transition the ball if you've got a guy that can't really distribute it in that final third? And Arsenal don't want to lose the ball, because when they do, they can get transitioned on. Think of how Tottenham have been pulled apart that many times this season. So I just think that if they end up with Sesko, I'm with you. I think it's the wrong choice. And I wonder why they were going that direction. Personally,
I mean, listen, like if they turned up with Jonathan David, right, Arsenal, would that be such a terrible signing either? I mean, could you imagine him playing behind Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, and the rest? You know, can you imagine the amount of goals he'd be banging away? And that's what they need. They need a guaranteed goal scorer, and that's what Jonathan David is. But listen, there is. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Victor Osimhen. I'm sure he's going to come up later on in this transfer window as well. But we shall see. I think there's going to be some surprises. You know, maybe Arsenal will go left field. I mean, who's going to go for Ekitike? Eintracht Frankfurt.
Sounds like Liverpool. I think.
Really?
Well, I'm just laughing at the pronunciation. And we had a chat. We had a little.
You know what? Every time I say it, I think I've got a different pronunciation.
It's a hard name. To be fair, it's a very hard name.
Ekitike.
The amount of comments I get in the bottom after my shows going, you two can't pronounce any of the players' names. None of them. You get them all wrong.
We don't get them all wrong, but that one's a difficult one.
But yeah, look, you know, I think Ekitike allegedly is on Liverpool's radar. If he's going to cost 80 million, right? If Sesko's 90, if he's 90, if Gyökeres is also 80, 90 million quid, like the benchmark's been set. So whoever gets Jonathan David, okay, he's not of that level. He's the tier below, but still on a relative valuation basis, it makes a lot of sense to see. I just hope that he doesn't end up in Napoli, because I feel like the Italian league always seem to get away with signing some monster players on the cheap. Yeah, and it's just I don't know why it is. I think that I think you said before. I think like the Premier League is the sugar daddies of the European football system, and it pisses me off. You know,
tell me something. Is Jonathan David really a tier below? I don't think so. When I look at his goals in the Champions League, right? His goals per appearances, every single league, you know, for Canada, for the Champions League.
Europa League, Conference League, everything.
Right? Everything he's been in, his goals stacking up. So, you know, is Sesko going to come and bang in 20 goals in a season?
I'll tell you who I think is going to bang in 20 goals next season. Liam Delap. Yeah. I think if he can stay fit and he's given enough minutes, I think Liam Delap is going to get 20 goals next season for Chelsea. I think they've got a ripper there. But I also think that maybe, unless Chelsea have ambitions to go again and get another striker, and then they were definitely going to let go of Nkunku, and you know they don't seem to mind having too many players in their squad. I feel like, don't get me wrong, you know, it's not a problem to be in having got a player of his caliber for that much money, and he's homegrown and English and all those things. But I feel like, you know, like you mentioned, Osimhen, you know, there is Sesko, there is Gyökeres, there is Jonathan David. Maybe look, if Dusan Vlahovic goes to Aston Villa, then what happens to what's his name? The guy who's currently at Villa, the striker.
Chris Wood.
No, not Chris Wood. Who's the Villa striker right now? Who's Watkins? Ollie Watkins, right? Is he going to move on? Like if Villa do get Dusan Vlahovic, are they going to move on Ollie Watkins? Is there space for both of them? Because they need to raise money because they're in a pickle with their 96% threshold. If he goes to Nottingham Forest, you know, then that's a really good fit as well. I think Dusan Vlahovic would be great as a great replacement for Chris Wood. But I just think there's a lot of strikers that are going to be up for grabs this summer. And I don't necessarily think that you might feel like you've missed out if a team gets one of them early, but I think there's going to be some of them still left around looking for new homes come late July. So it's going to be a long summer, but I agree with you, Johnny. It's going to be a massive, I think a record transfer spend in the Premier League this summer.
Tell me something, right? If you're if you're watching this upload this video, drop us a comment in there and tell us, what new up-and-coming young striker do you think could be the surprise that we haven't mentioned?
Nick Voltemade.
Yeah, there's a few. Throw us some names. Drop us some comments there about where you think who might be going. And if you're watching this, hit the subscribe button. We're moving onward and upwards, so we can bring you more content, and we're going to be doing this regularly. So get used to our faces and talking about your club, not just our own club. Who else have you got there? I mean, we saw Ben Davies, talking about Spurs, Ben Davies going to rub shoulders with the Hollywood stars down at Wrexham. They're looking to bring in 3 Premier League quality players.
You think they'll be in the Premier League in a year's time?
I'd love to see it. Wouldn't you love to see it?
It?
It's an amazing story. It's an amazing story. And if you haven't watched Welcome to Wrexham, you've missed out on it, because it's been fantastic. A great model. Get Disney to play for the series, pay you millions and millions and millions, and then funnel all that money back into the club, and get sponsors, which you would never get under normal circumstances because you're on the show. Fund a new stand. I mean, it's a brilliant model. Very, very clever.
Yeah, and it's clever player acquisition as well. Always going for, players a league above where they're going into. So they always seem to be one step ahead of the squad level that they're inheriting. It's very smart, and it shows you that there's a model to do football from that level to get you up to the big boys. So congratulations to the owners there and to the club. It'd be an interesting story to watch. The only other story, I think we've covered it quite a lot, mate, but Leroy Sané, he's looking for a move to London, looking for a move to the Premier League. And as I say, with Arsenal, Chelsea and Tottenham, the only 3 real, I guess, obvious candidates that could afford him. He plays off the right and off the left. I always thought he was more of a right winger. Whenever I've seen him, he's play off the right. But when I looked at his stats, he actually plays as many games off the left and is just as competent with his output on the left as he is on the right. I don't know if Arsenal will look towards him, if they not to compete with Saka, but maybe to replace Martinelli. I can't imagine Chelsea are going to do anything, especially if, like you say, they're about to trigger the Sancho clause. So maybe he comes to Tottenham.
No, listen, honestly, I think we're, as I said before, romanticising about the Leroy Sané that we saw at Manchester City, the player who absolutely ripped it up in the Premier League. I'm not saying he hasn't been good in Germany, but not to the level that he was. I'm quite all for a player who's approaching 30 to play in a midfield position, but not as a winger. We've seen what's happened with Sonny. If you're going to bring anybody from Bayern Munich, as a Spurs fan, I'd be bringing in Paulinho, but not for me, Sane. Listen, don't be surprised if it's a leverage move, Sean, because Bayern Munich want him. They've offered him money. Let's see. Well, this one could run for a while. I don't think he'd be in any hurry to sign any contract. So let's see what happens with that one. The other one that's been tied up, which is a great deal for Liverpool, is Real Madrid coughing up £10 million so that Trent can leave now before his end of contract on the 30th of June, so that he's eligible to play in the World Club Championship. That's 8.4 £1 million transfer fee, and the rest 1.6 million in wages for June. I don't know what you think of that, Sean, but it's a lot of money. But I see there's big money available in the World Club Championship. Maybe that's their thinking on that one.
Yeah, I guess also, they're coming to the realization. I don't know what sort of signing fee him and his agent got to join Real Madrid, but ultimately they've got a world-class player without having to pay a world-class transfer fee. So, £8.5 million in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot of money, but it's still a lot of money for what is, a short-term tournament. But obviously the money from that tournament is, first of all, it's a big deal. Second of all, the gravitas of the cup, if they were to win it, is also a big deal. And obviously, it's more. I guess some would say it's like a competitive pre-season tour for them almost. In that they can get themselves ready for what is, a busy season ahead for Real Madrid, of which every minute with someone like Trent in the team is valuable because he's a unique player that is going to obviously augment their shape and structure. So, I mean, it's a strangely high amount of money, and I guess Liverpool didn't really care either way. So it's nice for them to get an extra £8.5 million, and if that goes and pays off 10% of Ekitike, then it's a win-win for all people concerned.
Yeah, as far as Liverpool concerned, they haven't made that many mistakes in the transfer window. I've got to say, their recruitment's been very good. The last when they got rid of what's his name now for 140 million, was it 150 million? They spent that money wisely on Van Dijk and Alisson. And as I said, didn't spend any money, really substantial money last summer.
Just Chiesa, wasn't it? They bought, was it?
Chiesa, who's probably going back on loan or go somewhere.
You know, the interesting one, mate, is Luis Diaz, right? Like the player that once upon a time we thought we were this close to signing, and then Liverpool's got their noses in. Brilliant player. He hasn't signed any new contract with them yet, and apparently Saudi Arabia are coming in. So
yeah, he's a top player. And
would you take him at Tottenham, just out of curiosity?
Of course I would. Of course I would. I mean, basically, who wouldn't take him? Seriously. I mean, look at his energy levels and his work rate. Seriously.
How old is he now?
He is
28 years old. Yeah.
28, yeah. 28.
Prime.
I mean, when you look at, what about Jota? If I was getting rid of any of them, I think I'd be more likely inclined to get rid of Jota, wouldn't you? You got Jota, you've got Gakpo, you got Florian Wirtz. Do they need Ekitike?
Ekitike.
I'm going to go. Listen, I'm going away after this and going to have some elocution lessons on how to spell and pronounce. I can spell it, I just can't pronounce it.
That's about it, mate. I think the only other story there is about Marcus Rashford. Rafinha has sent a message to him saying if he wants, he's got to work harder than him, or he doesn't work as hard as him. And so there's the rumours for Rashford to Barcelona. I'd be surprised if that one came off. I mean, Barcelona always seem to find the money from somewhere, but I'm not sure if they need him, and I'm not sure if they'll be able to find one.
It's amazing. Barcelona, they've sold off 175% of their stadium. They've sold off 140% over the next 300 years for their
300,000 seats have been sold for a 100,000 seat stadium. It's quite incredible. Quite incredible. All right, guys. Well, that's it. That's about it from us, Johnny. I'll leave it there, and we'll say thanks, everyone. Please make sure you do smash the like button on the video if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Johnny, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Ciao.